Jung's dream method: how to decode your relationship patterns. Have you ever woken up from a dream about someone from your past and felt an unexplainable ache in your chest? That moment when your subconscious mind pulls you back into patterns you thought you'd left behind. What you experienced wasn't just a random firing of neurons during sleep. According to Carl Jung, one of history's most profound psychologists, your dreams are your psyche's way of showing you the invisible threads that control your relationships, the hidden patterns that determine why you're drawn to certain people and why you keep repeating the same emotional cycles. Tonight, as you close your eyes, your mind will create stories, scenarios, and encounters that seem random but are actually the most important messages you'll ever receive about your relationship patterns. Jung discovered that our dreams don't just reflect our daily experiences. They reveal the archetypal forces that shape our deepest connections with others. The person you dreamed about last night, the emotions you felt, the scenarios that played out, they're all clues to understanding why your relationships follow the patterns they do. Most people dismiss their dreams as meaningless entertainment for a sleeping mind. But Jung understood something revolutionary. Our dreams are the royal road to understanding our relationship unconscious, the hidden part of our psyche that determines who we love, how we love, and why we suffer in love. Every dream character represents an aspect of your relationship patterns. Every dream scenario reveals a hidden truth about your emotional blueprint. Think about the last vivid dream you had about a relationship. Maybe it was an ex-partner, a family member, or even a stranger who felt familiar. In that dream, you weren't just observing random images. You were witnessing your psyche working through the deepest patterns that govern your connections with others. Jung called this the compensatory function of dreams, where your unconscious mind shows you what your conscious mind refuses to see about your relationship dynamics. The tragedy is that most of us live our entire lives unconscious of these patterns. We repeat the same relationship mistakes, attract the same types of people, and wonder why we can't break free from cycles that cause us pain. We blame external circumstances, other people, or bad luck, never realizing that the answers lie within the symbolic language of our dreams. Jung's method offers us a key to decode this language and finally understand the invisible forces that shape our most intimate connections. Your relationship patterns weren't formed by chance. They were carved into your psyche through your earliest experiences, your family dynamics, your cultural conditioning, and most importantly, through the archetypal forces that Jung identified as universal patterns of human experience. The mother archetype influences how you seek nurturing and care in relationships. The father archetype shapes your relationship with authority and structure. The anima and animus, Jung's concepts for the feminine and masculine principles within us, determine how you project idealized qualities onto romantic partners. But here's what makes Jung's approach revolutionary. He discovered that these archetypal patterns reveal themselves most clearly in our dreams. When you dream about your mother, you're not just processing memories of your actual mother. You're encountering the mother archetype within your own psyche and seeing how it influences your need for emotional security in relationships. When you dream about romantic partners, you're witnessing how your anima or animus projects idealized qualities onto others, often leading to disappointment when real people can't live up to these unconscious projections. Consider Sarah, a client Jung worked with who repeatedly found herself in relationships with emotionally unavailable men. Her conscious mind couldn't understand this pattern, but her dreams revealed the truth. Night after night, she dreamed of chasing figures who remained just out of reach, of trying to rescue wounded men who ultimately rejected her help. Through Jung's method of dream analysis, she discovered that her relationship pattern was driven by her need to recreate and heal a childhood dynamic with an emotionally distant father. Her dreams showed her that she was unconsciously attracted to men who embodied this familiar wound, believing that if she could finally win their love, she would heal her original pain. This is the power of Jung's dream method. It reveals the unconscious motivations that drive our relationship choices. Your dreams show you not just what happened in your past, but how those experiences created internal templates that continue to influence your present relationships. The person you can't stop thinking about, the relationship that ended but still haunts you, the pattern of attraction that seems to control your romantic life. All of these have roots in the archetypal patterns that your dreams reveal. Jung understood that our relationship patterns operate like invisible magnets, drawing us toward people and situations that feel familiar, even when that familiarity is painful. We think we're choosing our partners consciously, but we're actually being guided by unconscious patterns that were established long before we had the awareness to understand them. Your dreams are the place where these patterns surface, where your psyche shows you the hidden dynamics that control your emotional life. The anima, Jung's term for the feminine principle in the male psyche, often appears in dreams as idealized women who represent everything a man believes he needs for completion. But when a man projects his anima onto real women, he creates impossible expectations that no human being can fulfill. His dreams reveal this projection, showing him encounters with perfect feminine figures who ultimately disappear or transform, teaching him that what he seeks outside himself must first be integrated within his own psyche. Similarly, the animus, the masculine principle in the female psyche, appears in women's dreams as powerful male figures who seem to hold the key to strength and direction. Women who haven't integrated their animus often find themselves in relationships with men who they believe will provide them with the power and authority they feel they lack. Their dreams reveal this dynamic, showing them scenarios where they give away their power to masculine figures who ultimately let them down, teaching them that true strength must come from within. But Jung's method goes deeper than just identifying these archetypal projections. It shows you how to work with your dreams to transform your relationship patterns. When you begin to understand the symbolic language of your dreams, you gain the power to recognize these patterns as they're happening in your waking life. You start to see when you're projecting archetypal qualities onto others, when you're repeating familiar but painful dynamics, when you're being guided by unconscious patterns rather than conscious choice. The process begins with what Jung called active imagination, a technique where you engage consciously with the images and emotions from your dreams. Instead of just remembering a dream and moving on with your day, you return to the dream in your imagination, dialogue with the dream characters, and allow the symbolic narrative to continue. This isn't just fantasy or daydreaming. It's a powerful psychological technique that allows you to integrate the unconscious content that your dreams are trying to communicate. When you dream about a past relationship, instead of dismissing it as nostalgia or wishful thinking, Jung's method teaches you to ask deeper questions. What qualities did this person represent in your psyche? What archetypal role were they playing in your inner world? What unresolved aspects of yourself were you projecting onto them? By engaging with these questions through active imagination, you begin to reclaim the projections and integrate the qualities you were seeking outside yourself. This integration is what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole by integrating the unconscious contents of your psyche. In terms of relationships, individuation means recognizing and integrating the archetypal patterns that have been controlling your emotional life unconsciously. When you integrate your anima or animus, you stop projecting these archetypal qualities onto others and start relating to people as they actually are, rather than as carriers of your unconscious projections. The dreams that disturb you the most are often the most important for understanding your relationship patterns. Dreams of betrayal, abandonment, rejection, or loss aren't just processing past pain. They're showing you the core wounds that continue to influence your relationship choices. Jung discovered that these painful dreams often contain the seeds of healing, revealing not just the wound but also the path toward integration and wholeness. Take the common dream of being cheated on or betrayed by a partner. On the surface, this might seem like anxiety about infidelity or insecurity about your relationship, but Jung's method reveals deeper layers of meaning. The betrayal in the dream often represents a betrayal of yourself, a way you've abandoned your own needs or authentic self in relationships. The dream partner who betrays you might represent the part of yourself that you've been unfaithful to, the authentic self you've sacrificed in order to maintain connection with others. Here's where Jung's approach becomes truly transformative. Instead of just analyzing the dream intellectually, his method involves embodying the dream experience and allowing it to teach you about your relationship patterns. You might imagine yourself back in the betrayal dream, but this time, instead of being the victim, you become curious about what the betrayal reveals about your own relationship with authenticity and self-worth. This process of working with dreams isn't just about understanding your patterns, it's about transforming them. When you consciously engage with the archetypal content of your dreams, you begin to develop what Jung called a relationship with your unconscious. Instead of being unconsciously controlled by these patterns, you develop the capacity to recognize them, work with them, and ultimately transform them. The mother complex, one of the most common relationship patterns Jung identified, often reveals itself in dreams about childhood homes, overwhelming feminine figures, or scenarios where you feel trapped or suffocated. If you have an active mother complex, you might find yourself in relationships where you either seek mothering from partners or unconsciously try to mother them. Your dreams reveal this pattern by showing you scenarios where dependency and autonomy are in conflict, where love feels conditional on your ability to please or be pleased. Working with these dreams through Jung's method involves recognizing that the mother figure in your dreams represents not just your actual mother, but the archetypal mother within your own psyche. This internal mother carries both nurturing and devouring qualities. The nurturing aspect provides emotional security and care, while the devouring aspect can consume your individuality and independence. Understanding this duality through your dreams allows you to develop a healthier relationship with both nurturing and autonomy in your relationships. The father complex manifests in dreams about authority figures, absent fathers, or scenarios involving judgment and approval. People with an active father complex often find themselves in relationships where power dynamics are central, where they either rebel against authority or seek approval from father-like figures. Jung's method reveals how these patterns play out in your dreams, showing you scenarios where you're either fighting against paternal authority or seeking its validation. But the most profound aspect of Jung's dream method is how it reveals the relationship between your inner masculine and feminine principles. Every person, regardless of gender, carries both masculine and feminine archetypal energies. The health of your relationships depends largely on how well these internal principles are integrated and balanced. Your dreams show you this integration process, revealing when these energies are in harmony and when they're in conflict. Dreams of romantic relationships often reveal the state of this inner marriage between your masculine and feminine sides. When you dream of harmonious romantic encounters, it often reflects a healthy integration of these principles within yourself. When you dream of conflict, rejection, or painful separation in romantic contexts, it usually reveals imbalances or wounds in your relationship with these internal energies. Jung discovered that people who have integrated their anima or animus tend to have healthier, more conscious relationships. They're less likely to project unconscious qualities onto partners and more capable of seeing and loving others as they actually are. This integration doesn't happen automatically. It requires conscious work with the symbolic content that appears in dreams. The shadow, Jung's term for the repressed and denied aspects of our personality, also plays a crucial role in relationship patterns. Your shadow often appears in dreams as threatening figures, enemies, or aspects of yourself that you find disturbing or unacceptable. In relationships, shadow projection is one of the most destructive forces, causing us to see in others the qualities we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. When you dream about people you dislike or who trigger strong negative emotions, you're often encountering your own shadow projections. The qualities that disturb you most in others are frequently the qualities you've repressed in yourself. Jung's method teaches you to recognize these projections through dream work, allowing you to reclaim your shadow and stop unconsciously attacking others for carrying qualities that actually belong to you. This shadow work is essential for healthy relationships because it reduces the tendency to make others responsible for your own repressed emotions and qualities. When you integrate your shadow through dream work, you become more accepting of the full spectrum of human nature, both in yourself and others. This acceptance creates space for authentic intimacy, where you can love others without needing them to be perfect or to carry only the qualities you find acceptable. The process of working with Jung's dream method isn't always comfortable. Dreams often reveal truths about our relationship patterns that our conscious mind would prefer to avoid. You might discover that you've been unconsciously seeking relationships that recreate familiar pain, that you've been projecting idealized qualities onto partners who could never fulfill them, or that you've been avoiding intimacy out of fear of the very connection you claim to want. But this discomfort is the price of consciousness, and consciousness is the price of freedom. When you understand your relationship patterns at the archetypal level, you gain the power to choose differently. Instead of being unconsciously driven by patterns established in childhood or inherited from your cultural conditioning, you can make conscious choices about how you want to relate to others. Jung's method also reveals how your relationship patterns connect to your spiritual development. He understood that relationships aren't just personal affairs, they're arenas for psychological and spiritual growth. The people you're most drawn to, the relationships that challenge you most deeply, the patterns that cause you the most pain. They're all opportunities for individuation, for becoming more conscious and whole. This spiritual dimension of relationships appears clearly in dreams. You might dream of sacred marriages, divine couples, or encounters with figures who represent wholeness and integration. These dreams reveal your psyche's natural movement toward wholeness, its desire to integrate opposing forces and transcend the limitations of unconscious patterns. But you might also dream of spiritual bypassing, of trying to escape relationship challenges through spiritual practices or ideologies. Jung was clear that genuine spirituality doesn't avoid the messiness of human relationships. It transforms our capacity to engage with that messiness consciously and lovingly. Can you remember the last time you had a dream that left you feeling deeply moved or disturbed about a relationship in your life? What was your psyche trying to tell you through that symbolic experience? The integration process that Jung's method facilitates isn't just about understanding your patterns, it's about embodying new possibilities. When you work consciously with your dreams, you don't just gain insight, you actually transform your capacity for relationship. The archetypal energies that were previously unconscious and controlling become conscious and available for creative expression. This transformation affects every aspect of your relationships. You become less reactive and more responsive. You're able to see others more clearly because you're not looking at them through the lens of unconscious projections. You're more capable of authentic intimacy because you're not trying to get others to fulfill roles that only you can fill in your own psychological development. The practice of Jung's dream method requires patience and commitment. Dreams don't always reveal their meanings immediately, and the process of integration takes time, but the rewards are profound. As you develop a relationship with your unconscious through dream work, you gain access to a source of wisdom and guidance that's always available to you. Your dreams become an ongoing dialogue with the deepest parts of yourself, a conversation that reveals not just your current relationship patterns, but also your potential for growth and transformation. You begin to see your relationships not just as sources of pleasure or pain, but as opportunities for individuation, for becoming more conscious and whole. This shift in perspective transforms everything. Difficult relationships become opportunities for shadow work and integration. Romantic attractions become chances to recognize and reclaim projections. Family dynamics become arenas for healing archetypal wounds and developing more conscious ways of relating. Jung understood that the goal of psychological development isn't to eliminate all relationship challenges, but to engage with them more consciously. When you understand your patterns at the archetypal level, you're still human. You still have preferences and triggers and blind spots, but you have much greater capacity to recognize these patterns as they're arising and to choose how you want to respond. The dreams that reveal your relationship patterns also point toward your potential for growth. Jung discovered that the psyche has a natural tendency toward wholeness, toward integrating unconscious contents and developing greater consciousness. Your dreams are expressions of this individuation drive, showing you not just where you are, but where you're capable of going in your psychological development. Working with these dreams requires what Jung called a symbolic attitude, an ability to engage with the images and emotions of dreams as meaningful expressions of your psyche rather than just random neural activity. This symbolic attitude is itself a form of consciousness, a way of relating to your inner life that honors its depth and complexity. When you approach your dreams with this attitude, they begin to reveal layers of meaning that weren't apparent at first glance. The person you dreamed about isn't just that person. They're also an aspect of yourself and a carrier of archetypal energy. The emotions you felt in the dream aren't just feelings, they're messages about your current psychological state and your potential for growth. This multi-layered approach to dream interpretation is what makes Jung's method so powerful for understanding relationship patterns. Instead of reducing dreams to simple wish fulfillment or anxiety processing, his method reveals the complex psychological dynamics that create and maintain our patterns of relating to others. As you develop skill in working with your dreams, you might notice that your relationship patterns begin to shift naturally. This isn't because you're trying to force change, but because consciousness itself is transformative. When you truly understand a pattern at the archetypal level, when you see how it operates in your psyche and your life, you automatically have more choice about whether to continue it. This is perhaps the most hopeful aspect of Jung's approach. It reveals that we're not doomed to repeat unconscious patterns forever. Through conscious engagement with the archetypal content of our dreams, we can transform our capacity for relationship and develop new possibilities for connection and intimacy. The person who understands their relationship patterns through Jung's dream method becomes someone who can love more freely because they're not unconsciously trying to get others to fulfill roles that only they can fulfill in their own psychological development. They become someone who can receive love more fully because they're not protecting against wounds that have been integrated through conscious dream work. But this transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen through intellectual understanding alone. It requires the ongoing practice of engaging with your dreams, of dialogue with your unconscious, of integrating the archetypal contents that appear in your sleep. Jung's method is a lifelong practice, a way of relating to your inner life that continues to deepen and evolve as you do. What relationship pattern have you been struggling with that might finally make sense if you understood it at the archetypal level through your dreams? The ultimate goal of Jung's dream method isn't to perfect your relationships or eliminate all pain and challenge from your emotional life. The goal is consciousness, the development of your capacity to engage with relationships from a place of awareness rather than unconscious compulsion. When you understand your patterns at the archetypal level, you're still human, you still have preferences and boundaries and needs, but you're much less likely to be unconsciously controlled by patterns that cause unnecessary suffering for yourself and others. This consciousness brings a quality of freedom to your relationships that's profoundly liberating. You're free to love without the desperate neediness that comes from unconscious projection. You're free to be authentic without the fear that comes from unintegrated shadow material. You're free to choose partners based on genuine compatibility rather than unconscious compulsions to repeat familiar patterns. Jung's method also reveals the collective dimension of our relationship patterns. The archetypal forces that shape our individual relationships are also active in our cultural and social relationships. Understanding your personal patterns through dream work often leads to greater awareness of how these same patterns operate in families, communities, and societies. This awareness can be both disturbing and empowering. Disturbing because it reveals how unconscious patterns perpetuate cycles of dysfunction at every level of human relationship. Empowering because it shows how individual consciousness work contributes to collective healing and transformation. When you transform your own relationship patterns through Jung's method, you don't just change your personal life, you contribute to a more conscious collective. Your increased capacity for authentic relationship creates ripples that affect everyone you encounter. Your integration of shadow material reduces the amount of unconscious projection happening in your relationships, which makes space for others to be more authentic as well. This is why Jung saw individual psychological work as ultimately social and even spiritual work. The person who has integrated their archetypal patterns through dream work becomes someone who can contribute to more conscious collective relationships, whether in families, communities, workplaces, or society as a whole. The practice of Jung's dream method requires courage because it asks you to face aspects of yourself and your patterns that you might prefer to keep unconscious. It's often easier to blame others for relationship problems than to recognize your own unconscious contributions to painful dynamics. It's more comfortable to maintain familiar patterns, even painful ones, than to venture into the unknown territory of more conscious relating. But the rewards of this courage are immense. The person who has worked with their relationship patterns through Jung's method develops a quality of presence and authenticity that transforms every relationship they enter. They become someone who can see others clearly, because they're not looking through the distorting lens of unconscious projections. They become someone who can love freely, because they're not unconsciously trying to get others to heal wounds that only they can heal through their own psychological work. Your dreams tonight will continue the conversation that Jung began over a century ago. They'll show you images, scenarios, and emotions that reveal the archetypal patterns shaping your relationships. The question is whether you'll dismiss these dreams as meaningless entertainment or engage with them as the profound psychological communications they actually are. The choice to work with your dreams using Jung's method is a choice to take responsibility for your own psychological development and your capacity for relationship. It's a choice to move from unconscious reaction to conscious response, from projection and blame to integration and acceptance, from familiar patterns to new possibilities. This work isn't easy, but it's perhaps the most important work you can do for your relationships and your life. Every dream is an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply, to integrate unconscious content, and to develop greater capacity for authentic connection with others. Do you have the courage to look at your relationship patterns through the lens of your dreams, to see what your unconscious has been trying to tell you about the archetypal forces that shape your most intimate connections? If you found this exploration of Jung's dream method helpful, if it's given you new insight into your own relationship patterns, I'd love for you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps me create more content about the psychological wisdom that can transform our lives and relationships. Share this video with someone who might benefit from understanding their relationship patterns more deeply. And please, leave a comment about your own experiences with dreams and relationships. What patterns have you noticed in your own dream life? How might Jung's method help you understand your relationships differently? The conversation about consciousness and relationships is one we're all having together, whether we realize it or not. Your insights and experiences contribute to a collective understanding that helps all of us relate more consciously and authentically. Subscribe now so you don't miss future explorations of the psychological wisdom that can transform your life and relationships. Your journey toward more conscious relating starts with the next dream you remember, the next pattern you recognize, the next choice you make to engage with your relationships from awareness rather than unconscious compulsion.